What's up everybody, I'm Paul and welcome to my channel. So in June 2021, Google started rolling out its new algorithm update with a strong focus on what it's calling its core web vitals. And this update has got a lot of WordPress website owners worried and concerned about what they need to do in order to optimize their site so it complies with these new core web vitals. And in this video, I'm going to show you some of the things you can do to your site to optimize it and improve your core web vital scores. So make sure you stick around through the video because there's going to be lots of different things I cover. But before I get into the optimization, I just want to quickly go over what are the three main elements of this new core web vitals update, because there does seem to be some confusion around this online. So I thought I'd go over these before we get into the optimization. So let's get started. So the first element is the largest contentful paint, or LCP. And what this effectively is the largest element that loads in the viewport of the visitors to your website. And this can be things like images or it can be text. It's just whatever the largest single element is in that viewport, how long does that take to load? The second element is the first input delay, and this is the one that confuses a lot of people. But what this is what is the time between somebody interacting with something on your site, say clicking a button for example, and the time it takes for your website to respond. Now this only applies to when they're interacting with your site, say clicking things like buttons. If they're scrolling or zooming on your website, this doesn't apply. It's just when they click on something to actually interact with your website. And the third element is cumulative layout shift, or CLS. And what this basically is how much the elements move around on your web page when your web page is loading. And does this cause any disruption for the users of your website? So if they went to click on a button but an image hasn't loaded, for example, when that image loads, does it move that button further down the page and means that they can't click on that button? It is just how much the elements on your page move around when it's loading. So those are the three elements that make up Google's new core web vitals algorithm update. But how important is this to your website? Well, currently it's thought to be only a minor ranking factor, and it's basically going to be the decision between two websites that are basically the same. But I think this is going to become much more important and a much more relevant ranking factor in the future, because Google is very much focused on user experience, and they're going to be, in my opinion, putting websites forward that offer a much better user experience than websites that don't offer a good user experience. So while it's not particularly important at the moment, I think it is going to be something that's going to become much more important in the future for things like e-commerce websites and blogs. It's going to definitely become a more important ranking factor, because if it wasn't, Google wouldn't be putting such a heavy focus on this in their tools. So how do you actually optimize your WordPress site so that it starts to comply with these new core web vitals? Well, that's what I'm going to show you in this video, because it's something I've been spending a lot of time doing over the past couple of months, specifically on my blog ecommercegold.com. And on screen now, I'm going to show you the results of my work. This is one of the most popular posts on my site, and this is the performance I've got from that post. As you can see, it's pretty good. Both mobile and desktop are in the 90s. Now, when it comes to page speed insights and testing on page speed insights, you do need to be aware that your performance can fluctuate from times of day to different days. With some posts, I have mobile scores that range from anywhere from the high 70s to the low 90s. It just depends seemingly on the time of day that I seem to run the test, and also the day of the week that I seem to run the test. It's not a consistent thing, and you will get varying results depending on when you actually run the test. So it's just something you do want to be aware of. But in this video, I am going to go through the process basically that I went through in order to optimize my website. So hopefully you can do the same to yours and improve your scores on core web vitals, but also improve the general performance of your site. So hopefully it's going to load quicker. So with the introduction out of the way, let's jump into the video. Now, before you actually start doing any kind of performance upgrades or optimizations to your website, you want to know where you're currently at. And this is where you need to get a benchmark for your current performance. And for Core Web Vitals, Google's Page Speed Insights is the best tool that's out there, because it's Google's own tool. But when it comes to general page speed, what you want to use is other tools, and there are a few you can choose from. You've got things like GT Metrics, you've got things like Pingdom, which is what I use for all of my e-commerce platform testing. And there's also a new one that I've discovered called Uptrends, and I absolutely love this site. It's a fantastic tool because you can test it from all different places around the world, but you can also test it on desktop and mobile devices. Absolutely fantastic tool, and I'm a big fan of it. And that's what I've been using basically to make sure that my site is performing well around the world. So the first thing you want to do is you want to get a benchmark performance level so that you can see if any of the changes you're making to your site are actually making any difference in terms of your performance. So once you've got your benchmark, the first thing you can look at doing is moving to a good quality web host. Now you may already be with a good quality web host, but if you're not, you may want to consider moving over to another one. And when it comes to choosing a web host, there are lots of options out there. And I'm not going to name any specific web hosts. I'm just going to go with a couple of general recommendations that I do recommend to other people. So the first method is to use good quality managed WordPress hosting. Now this does come at a cost. It's more expensive than shared hosting, but you do get some benefits with using managed WordPress hosting. The first one is the servers are usually running less websites, and they're also WordPress specific as well, which generally means they'll offer slightly better performance over normal shared hosting. And another thing is you can actually contact the web host and ask if there's any recommendations they can provide for your website to see if you can improve your performance and optimization. So that's one thing. And the second option is, if you're going to be using shared hosting, to go with a web host that uses Lightspeed server technology. This is because this is some of the fastest server technology that's out there, and later on in the video I'm going to show you a couple of things specifically for using with Lightspeed server technology that's going to make your website perform so much better. So make sure you stick around to see what those things are. But that is the first thing, is to go with a good quality web host, and if it's shared hosting, to use Lightspeed server technology because it's going to provide better performance for your website. Now the second thing is also going to be based on your hosting, and that is to update the PHP version you're running. Now this may sound scary for a lot of people, but it's a very simple thing to do. But if you don't want to do it yourself, you can always reach out to the team at your hosting company and ask, can they do it for you? But you can also do it yourself via your control panel or your dashboard, depending on the type of hosting you're using. Now, when it comes to updating your PHP version, I would not recommend going for the latest version that's out there, which currently is version 8.0. The reason is a lot of plugin developers and theme developers haven't quite updated their stuff to work with PHP 8 yet. So I would actually recommend going with the last version, which is PHP 7.4, which I've tested myself, and the majority of themes that are regularly updated and also plugins seem to work really well with PHP 7.4. Now, updating your PHP version can have a big impact on the speed of your website, especially if you're running quite an older version. If you're running something like 5.6, upgrading from 5.6 to 7.4 is going to show you a massive improvement in speed when it comes to your website. So now we're actually going to start looking at things you can do on your WordPress site, not the hosting. Now, the first thing you want to do is you want to use a fast theme, because this can make a big difference, because not all themes are coded the same. Some themes have really bad coding, which means they do slow down quite a lot. Now, I haven't had the time to go through and test all of the WordPress themes that are out there, but the guys at Kinstat, who are a managed WordPress host, have actually gone through and tested lots of the most popular themes, done some rigorous testing on it, and produced a list of the fastest themes for WordPress. And this was actually what I used to make a decision on which theme I was going to use on e-commerce gold. For anybody who's interested, I use Neve or Neve, however you say it, by ThemeOil, because I think it's a really good theme. It offers a lot of the functionality I need, but also it's a very lightweight and well-coded theme that performs really well. So make sure you use a good quality, fast and responsive WordPress theme. Now, the fourth thing you can do is go through on your WordPress site and remove any unused or unwanted themes and plugins. And I'm going to show you on my e-commerce gold demo site exactly what I mean by this. So this is my e-commerce gold demo site dashboard, and if we go into themes, as you can see, I've got a lot of themes currently installed because I try out quite a few different themes. But if this was my live website, I would want to delete all of these themes that I'm not using, and I just want to stick with the parent and child theme of my current theme. And I'll delete all the other themes because I'm not using them and they're just taking up valuable space on my website. Exactly the same when it comes to plugins. Now, obviously, I'm just using this as a test site, but I have plugins currently that aren't activated. And if this was your site and you've got plugins that you've installed but you haven't activated or you're not using, go through and delete them. So I'll delete all these ones that aren't activated. And now, another thing you can do when it comes to your plugins is to do a plugin audit on your site. And what this basically is to go through and look at all the plugins you've got installed and ask yourself, do I need this plugin and is it essential for the day-to-day running of my site? If the answer is no, then uninstall and delete the plugin because it's just adding unnecessary bloat to your website. Another thing you can do is also look if there's alternative options available. So if you're using something like a plugin that's got lots of different functionality, but you're just using the one function of that plugin, is there a single plugin out there that just offers that one piece of functionality? So you haven't got all the bloat of the rest of the plugin, you've just got that one functionality that you need, and it's going to reduce the size of your website, which is going to reduce the amount of data that needs to be loaded for your users. Now, another thing you can do when it comes to optimizing your WordPress site is to not use page builders. This is things like Elementor. Now, I know these are great for building really well designed pages, but they do come at a cost, and that is these plugins are quite bloated and they add bloat to your website, which means there's more code that needs to be loaded when someone goes on your site. And you want to reduce this as much as possible. Now, I know this can be quite a controversial topic, and there's people arguing on Facebook groups and forums around the world about this to this day. But for me personally, I prefer to go with the lightest weight option. So I use the standard Gutenberg page builder, and I use a couple of basically simple block plugins that add the blocks that I need in order to produce the post that I want for my site. And if you want to go and have a look to see whether or not Gutenberg can produce good looking pages, go and take a look at e-commerce gold. I think those pages, especially my reviews, are pretty well laid out. They've got lots of good elements in there, and it's just using Gutenberg and a couple of simple block plugins, mainly Stackable and Ultimate Blocks. I think that's the one. So that's what I use for my website, and I used to use page builders, but when I switched over, I saw the size of my pages reduce massively, and I also saw the page speed improve as well. So that's why I always advocate just use the standard Gutenberg page builder and a couple of block plugins if you need to. Now, a thing you can do that can make a big impact to the performance of your website is to optimize your website's images. And this can have a big impact on the LCP, or the largest contentful paint, especially if you've got images that load at the top of your page. So this could be your blog headers, it could be product images if you've got a WooCommerce site. This can make a big difference to the page speed. This is because you want to reduce the image size as much as possible. And I'm going to show you some examples of the three main things you can do in order to optimize your images. The first one is to upload the correct size image. This is something a lot of people don't do. So what you want to do is look through your theme's documentation and see what the recommended image sizes are, because they know what image sizes are going to be required for their website. Now, when it comes to creating these images, I always create them slightly larger. The reason is I've had experiences in the past where I've uploaded the recommended sizes and the images have been a little bit blurred. So for example, if it says you can upload a 500 by 500 pixel image, I'll actually create a 600 by 600 pixel image just because it seems to display better than the standard 500 by 500. Now on screen now, I'm going to show you the size difference between a 2000 by 2000 pixel JPEG and a 600 by 600 pixel. And as you can see, it's a huge difference. And if you're loading these large images on your site, it's going to slow it down a lot, and it's going to have a big impact on your LCP. So the second thing you can do when it comes to optimizing your images is to upload in the correct image format. And this is something I see a lot of websites doing wrong. And the reason why the correct format can make such a difference is because it can maintain the quality, but it can also reduce the size of your images. And one of the big ones I see is people uploading PNG images to the site. Now, this isn't always the best option. And the only reason I ever use PNG images is if I need a transparent background, say for my logo, for example. But for the majority of images, I will use a JPEG. And as you can see on screen, this is the difference between two 600 by 600 pixel images. The PNG is nearly twice as large as the equivalent JPEG, which is a big difference and a lot more data that needs to be loaded on your site for your site's users. Now, there is a new format for images coming about called WebP, but this is still very much in its infancy, and even though it's going to be something that's going to become much more prevalent in the future, currently a good web optimized JPEG image is going to be the best one to go for, in my opinion. And talking of web optimized, that leads me on to 3, which is to use a web optimized image, because not all JPEGs are the same. And on screen, you'll see the difference between an unoptimized image and an optimized JPEG image. And as you can see, the optimized image is a lot smaller than the unoptimized image. So those are 3 things you can do to optimize your images. And just to compare the original image, the 2000 by 2000 versus the 600 by 600 optimized image, you can see the size difference. The optimized image is about 4% of the size of the original image, which is going to make a huge difference to the load time of your website. But Paul, how do you create these images? Well, there's a couple of options you can go through. The first one is you can use Save for Web functionality in Photoshop or similar functionality in any kind of photo editor you've got for your desktop. But there is an online tool you can use, which is absolutely fantastic, and I have used this in the past myself. So I'm going to jump back into my computer to show you exactly how to do this. So this is a site called Canva, and it is fantastic. I've been using this for a few years, and honestly, it's an amazing website. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a design. We're going to set a custom size. Just for this example, we're going to go 500 by 500 pixels. And as you can see, it creates a 500 by 500 template. Then what you want to do is you want to upload your image. In this case, I've already uploaded some, which I used on the previous slides. As you can see, this is my 2000 pixel JPEG image. And if you just click on that, it'll bring it into the viewfinder. Just expand it so it fills out the template. Once you've done that, just click on download, change the image format to JPEG, and then click download. Now, if you're using the free Canva plan, you won't have these options to resize it or the quality. These are only available on Canva Pro, which is what I'm using. But on the free one, it will automatically create an image for you, which you can download in JPEG, and this will be a web optimized image. So as you've just seen from the slides I've just shown you, image optimization can make a massive difference to the size of the file that you're going to be uploading to your website. But there's also some on-site optimization you can do as well by using image optimization plugins. Now, for me personally, I use a plugin called Smush. It's a plugin I've been using for many years. I've tried other plugins, but Smush is the one I do like. And this is because it's set up specifically for WordPress. And even though you've uploaded a web optimized image, there may still be some compression that's available. And this may only be 1 kilobyte or less, but as we say, every little helps. And the smaller the file size, the less data that needs to be transferred, and the quicker your website is going to load. So everything I've shown you in the video up until this point should have had a positive impact on your site's load speed and also your core web vital scores. But what I'm going to go through next is arguably going to have the biggest impact, and that is installing an optimization and caching plugin on your WordPress site. But it is highly recommended that you don't do this on your live website just yet. Instead, create a staging version of your website, which is a direct clone of your website, which can install the optimization plugins and test them out without creating any problems on your main site, because there's going to be certain things that you change that can break your site, and you want to do this on your test site rather than your main live website. If you don't know how to create a staging website, all you need to do is create a subdomain and then clone your website over. If you're not comfortable doing this, ask your web host to take you through, or maybe even create a staging website for you. And then when you install and start playing around with the optimization, you're just going to be doing this on your test site, so you're not going to be doing it on your main website. Now, when it comes to options for optimization and caching plugins, there are quite a few out there, as with everything with WordPress. There's very simple options such as Auto Optimize and WP Super Cache, which are very basic, and for beginner users, they're very easy to use. There's also paid options such as WP Rocket, which is very highly rated, and you can get really good performance scores using the WP Rocket plugin. But my personal preference is the Lightspeed Cache plugin. And this is what I mentioned earlier in the video when I was talking about web hosts. If you go with a web host that's using Lightspeed server technology, the Lightspeed Cache plugin is going to work seamlessly with your hosting environment. This is because the Lightspeed Cache plugin has been developed by the people who also developed the server technology, so it works seamlessly together. And this is what I use on my sites, and I've got really good performance, as I showed you at the start of the video. So I'm going to jump back into my computer so we can have a quick look at this plugin. Now, there are lots of options in this plugin. It's very much a freemium plugin, and in my opinion, one of the best freemium plugins out there. And when it comes to optimization, some of the main things you're going to be doing is optimizing your CSS, your JavaScript, and this says optimization, but it's actually your HTML code. But you want to take a very systematic approach when you're going through and trying this optimization, because you don't just want to turn everything on and hope everything works, because there's going to be certain things in here that's going to break your site. It's going to break the front end of your site, and some cases it might not even load full stop. Other cases it may just affect the display of your site. So I'm going to show you exactly how you go through and do this testing properly. Now, this is very much a trial and error process, and unfortunately there aren't any kind of set guidelines for using this plugin and the optimization settings. I've got multiple WordPress sites. I use this plugin on all of them, and I've got different settings for different sites because they're using different themes and different plugins. So one size, it definitely doesn't fit all when it comes to optimizing WordPress sites. But when it comes to optimization, what you want to do is you want to turn one thing on at a time. So we've turned on CSS combine, external and inline. Then what you want to do is save changes. You then want to go down into your toolbox. You want to purge all on your cache. This is your website side cache. And then you want to go through and check to make sure everything's displaying properly on the front end of your site. You may need to clear your browser cache as well if it's stored any images or things like that. And then when you know everything's displaying properly, you want to run it through PageSpeed Insights and basically your speed tool that you're choosing to use for your site as well, and see if there's any improvement, or maybe it could have slowed your site down. Some of these things don't always work as they are intended, and they can have a negative impact on your site's performance. But say this is very much a trial and error process. You need to go through every single thing on the page optimization, see what works and see what doesn't for your website. Now there are also media settings as well, so you can choose to turn lazy load images on and also lazy load iframes. Now I know this is included with the core WordPress code, but I still find that the lazy load options through the Lightspeed Cache plugin works better than the core ones. I'm not sure why that happens, it just seems to work better. But one of the things I did notice that had a massive impact on my site's CLS, or cumulative layout shift, was when I turned lazy load images on, it started to lazy load my logo, and this caused a big cumulative layout shift on my page, and I was getting scores of like 0.25, which puts it in the red. So what I did for this one was save those changes, go on to media exclude, and I excluded my logo from the lazy load, and this brought my cumulative layout shift down from like 0.25 down to 0.05, which is ideal. It's exactly where I wanted it to be. So that's one quick tip for you. If you are having CLS issues, cumulative layout shift issues, try excluding your logo from the lazy load to see if that makes a difference, because it made a massive difference to my site. Now, as I said, it's going to take a lot of trial and error in order to be able to get this plugin set up properly. It took me around 2 days of trying, tweaking different things in order to be able to get it to the settings that I needed in order to get the best performance out of my website. Now, the final thing you can do for optimization is you can use a CDN on your website. Now, for some websites, this isn't going to be essential. This is because if all of your basically traffic comes from one location where your website's hosted, you don't really need to use a CDN. So for example, if I was running a site that was just primarily focused on the UK and all of my traffic was coming from the UK, I would only need to use a host based in the UK. But with my site e-commerce goals, I have traffic from all around the world, so I need my content to be served up quickly to all of these people. Now, if I wasn't using a CDN and I had a visitor from Australia, for example, to my site, and my site's based in the UK, all of my data would have to be sent halfway around the world, and this is going to have a very negative impact on the user experience from that person from Australia, because it's going to take a while for my information to get over there and it to populate properly on their browser. Whereas if I'm using a CDN and my CDN provider's got a server in Australia, it's going to serve up a cache version of my website from the server in Australia, and they're going to get quick access to my website. And this is where a CDN can make a massive difference for websites that have got a global audience. But what are the options that are out there for CDNs? Well, the first one you can use is one called Cloudflare, and this is free to use. They have a completely free plan, and for the majority of WordPress websites, especially smaller sites, this is going to be ideal. It's going to work perfectly well. Let's say it's completely free to use. But I personally use a different CDN. I use something called QuickCloud CDN, which is one that has actually just gone into production. It's been kind of in testing mode for a while, and the reason why I use this CDN is because it's been developed in conjunction with the guys at Lightspeed, and it is the world's first WordPress specific content delivery network. So if you're using a WordPress site, it's set up specifically for WordPress, which obviously you would be, you're watching this video. And I've been really impressed with the performance I've got out of the QuickCloud CDN. And if you're using a web host that uses Lightspeed server technology, you may also have some free allocation for the QuickCloud CDN. Speak to the guys who host your site and see if they have got any setup with the QuickCloud CDN. I know I have through my web host, which is absolutely amazing, and it is working really, really well. Now, there are other options. There's other different types of CDN out there, but for the majority of WordPress websites, either Cloudflare or QuickCloud CDN is going to work perfectly, and it's going to provide you really good performance for your website. Now, getting set up with these does take a little bit of technical knowledge, and arguably Cloudflare is a bit easier to get set up with. But QuickCloud, when you read through the documentation a couple of times and you begin to understand it, it does work really, really well, and it's not that hard to set up. So those are some of the ways you can optimize your WordPress website. And I know there's a lot of information that I've packed into this video because I wanted to cover everything everything that I've done to my website. So hopefully you can do some of these things to your website to see some improvement in load speed and also your core web vital scores as well. Now, if any of the things did go over your head, I do apologize. I tried to keep this as simple as possible and tried to remove as much technical jargon as I possibly could. But these things all should have an impact on your site, a positive impact on your site's performance. Now, I know I didn't go into the 3 individual elements and things you can do, but that's because basically if you do the things I've mentioned in this video, these should all reflect in your core web vital scores, because things like optimizing your images can affect the LCP. Things like not lazy loading your logo can have an impact on your CLS. There's little things you can do that will impact your core web vital scores, but make sure you do this on a testing website, a staging website, and make sure you do all the optimization in your testing environment to make sure it all works properly before putting it on your live site. That is the most important thing, because you don't want to break your live site and have people complaining that they can't get on your website. So I hope you found this video helpful. It's been quite a marathon to actually try and put this together. So if you found it helpful, please drop a like on the video, because it really does help the channel out with the almighty YouTube algorithm. Also, if you'd like to support the channel, you can do by buying me a coffee using the link in the description below. So thank you so much for watching, guys. Stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next one.